If you believe that you're not the toxic one, and then they believe they're not the toxic one, then what's actually going on here? Maybe the problem isn't about who's toxic. The problem is that let's talk about toxic people, because toxic people are everywhere, right? You've got narcissists who only care about themselves. You've got manipulators who twist every situation into their favor. You've got gaslighters who make you question your own reality. You've got users who take and take but never give back. And let's not forget the chronic victims, the people who just never take responsibility for anything. They drain your energy. They ruin your relationships. They make life harder than it needs to be. And if you're not careful, they will pull you into their mess. So we typically do what we've been taught. We set the boundaries. We cut them off. We refuse to engage because we know toxic people just don't change. They're going to keep hurting you and hurting you as long as you allow them to stay in your life. And that's why the best advice, the only advice, is very simple. Stay away. Because if you don't, you'll just end up getting hurt. Now, I want to challenge that idea. And look, I don't want to deny your experience. I don't want to suggest that you haven't been hurt. I just want to ask you one question. What if we've been thinking about toxic people all wrong? Now, before you roll your eyes, just hear me out, because I know what you're thinking. Like, I've seen toxic people. I've dealt with toxic people. I know what they're like. They're in my family. And I believe you. I really do. But let me ask you something. Do you think they see themselves as toxic? Do you think they wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, I can't wait to be toxic and ruin people's lives today? Probably not. Because just like you, just like me, they probably believe they're just doing the best they can. They think they're the ones who are dealing with difficult people. They think they're the ones who are being misunderstood. They probably think they're just trying to protect themselves and get what they need and make sense of the world. So if you believe that you're not the toxic one and they believe they're not the toxic one, then what's actually going on here? And maybe the problem isn't about who's toxic. The problem is the dynamic that two of you have created. Because from a spiritual perspective, there are no toxic people. Instead, there are only toxic dynamics or toxic interactions. And these toxic interactions happen when one person has weak boundaries while the other person has strong boundaries. Or when one person is emotionally expressive and the other one is trying to be logical and dismissive. Or when one person needs space and the other person needs constant connection. And when these differences collide over and over again, it creates friction. And that friction can turn into resentment, can turn into judgment, it can turn into passive aggressiveness, it can turn into toxicity. And over time, that toxicity causes the relationship to sour. Not because either person is necessarily bad, but because the connection between those two people have reached its expiration date. Here's the analogy that I like to use when it comes to toxic dynamics. Think of relationships, think of friendships that potentially become toxic, like milk. It doesn't have to be dairy milk. It could be any kind of milk you want. But when milk is within its expiration time, it's great. But we all know that milk has an expiration date. There's a limit on how long it's going to stay fresh. And after the freshness expires, the milk spoils. And so if you drink the milk, once it becomes spoiled, obviously you're going to feel sick. And here's the key. The milk isn't the problem. The problem is drinking the milk past the expiration date. And that's exactly how relationships and friendships work. Every relationship, every friendship has a natural expiration date, which means there's a point where it stops feeling aligned for you. Some relationships expire after an hour. Some could last a few months. Some last years, but only in certain conditions. And if you keep engaging past that expiration time, you're going to start feeling drained by that same person. You may start to feel irritated. You may start to feel resentful. Not because they're toxic, but because you didn't respect the expiration time. Now, let's make this real. Think about someone in your life who frustrates you. What if, instead of labeling them as toxic, what if you just acknowledge that you and them have an expiration time? Maybe you can be in their presence for a couple of hours before things start to go sideways. Or maybe it's just 30 minutes before you hit that limit. Or maybe the best way to appreciate that person is from a distance. For instance, there's a relative in my family, my mom, who I have an expiration time with, depending on the situation. If we're out having dinner, we're good for about an hour and a half before I start thinking to myself, okay, she's getting annoying. If we're driving together and I'm driving in, she's in the passenger seat, the expiration time is about 20 minutes. Because after that, she starts telling me how to drive and I start getting annoyed. And suddenly the warmth and the appreciation that I would normally have for her starts to dissipate. So I've learned that when it comes to driving scenarios, I need to respect the expiration time. If we're going somewhere very far, it's going to take longer than 20 minutes to get there. It's probably better if we just meet there. Not because I don't love her, but because I have learned to honor the expiration time instead of pushing past it. And this is where most people get stuck. They keep drinking the spoiled milk and then they keep blaming the milk. They keep interacting past the expiration date. And then they say, oh, this person is so toxic. But the real problem is that you just ignored your limit. And once you start seeing this, you can't unsee it. Because what happens is suddenly people will stop seeming like villains. You'll stop expecting them to be different than how they are. You'll stop feeling frustrated by how they're showing up. And instead, you just start to adjust and tweak how much you are choosing to engage with them. You respect the expiration time. And when you do that more and more, you're going to find that you stop wasting energy trying to change people and you start spending energy protecting your own peace while appreciating whatever good qualities these other people have. Because here's the truth. Your peace is your responsibility. It's not anyone else's responsibility. And if someone keeps disrupting your peace and making you miserable, it's not their job to change, and it's not your job to change them. It's your job to adjust to the expiration time. And if you keep stepping into that toxic dynamic, that's on you. Just like if you keep drinking that spoiled milk, that's on you. So instead of asking, why are they like that? And gossiping about them, you want to ask yourself, hey, real question. What's my limit with that dynamic that me and that person have? And then once you know the answer, respect the expiration time. What do you think? Does this match your experience? Have you ever blamed the milk when you should have just checked the expiration time? Let me know in the comments. If you want to go deeper, I've written several books on various spiritual topics, including happiness, personal growth, inspiration, minimalism, and meditation. If you want to book a one-on-one consultation with me, all the details are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Just FYI, we post a new video almost every day, so make sure you comment and subscribe below so you don't miss out on anything. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you're really going to love this one as well. And if you ever want to see a playlist of all of my podcasts or all of the plot twists or any other category of videos, you can find links to those in the description below.